my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be here. It is the best video of the year. I am going to be wrapping up my very favorite nonfiction books of 2023. Now, my voice still has not come back, so I sound a little bit like this, but bear with me. I'm really excited to talk about these books. Let's just jump into those. I started out my year strong with a few books that kind of dealt with similar themes. So the first book that I want to talk about is American Baby, A Mother, a Child, and the Shadow History of Adoption by Gabrielle Glaser. It's talking about how in the 1960s, having a baby out of marriage was seen as very scandalous. And so the history of adoption during this time was a lot of times very coercive. And a lot of these women were very much pressured into giving up their children, even if that wasn't what they wanted. And so this is following a specific instance and the pain that this mother went through and how much she wanted to be reunited with her child. And it really discusses a lot of the issues that surround adoption, especially in this time period in the United States. I loved this book, but soon after I picked up the book, The Girls Who Went Away, The Hidden History of Women Who Surrendered Children for Adoption in the Decades Before Roe v. Wade by Ann Fessler. And this was excellent. So I highly recommend this one. It deals with a lot of the same themes, but instead of focusing just on one story from beginning to end, it focused on many women's stories, positive and negative, with giving up their children for adoption and what that was, the traumas that they went through. And I thought it was a really rounded out picture of all of that. So I thought this one was really excellent. I do recommend both. I think if you are interested in this topic, American Baby is great if you prefer one story to thread that narrative all the way through the book. But if you want maybe more of a breadth of experience, pick up The Girls Who Went Away, or like me, just read both. But it really changed how I look at adoption and really helped me understand what these women would have gone through. On a similar note, I picked up the book Invisible Child, Poverty, Survival, and Hope in an American City by Andrea Elliott. And this is following a girl named Dasani Coates for 8 years. This author was with her for 8 years of her life, following how poverty and how family troubles and addiction and all these things have affected her life. Now, it really sheds a light on where the safety net in the United States falls short. And it's a very interesting look. And you can obviously see that this author has put a lot of work, spending 8 years working on this book, right? But of course, you have to think, well, if she's there with this girl for 8 years, that's going to affect what happens, right? And I think the author really addressed that well and showed that what things changed because she was there and what things didn't. This one was a really good one, like the other two, to look at some of the social systems that go on in the United States and what has changed and what needs to continue to change. So this past year, I picked up 3 books by the author Candice Millard, and I really enjoyed all of them. My favorite 2 were Destiny of the Republic, A Tale of Madness, Medicine, and the Murder of a President, as well as The River of Doubt, Theodore Roosevelt's Darkest Journey. And those were my very favorite 2. I also read River of the Gods, Genius, Courage, and Betrayal in the Search for the Source of the Nile. But the reason that one isn't quite up there with the other 2 is I didn't quite connect with it as well as the first 2. Now, those 2 books were so good. The one is following the life of Garfield the president. And I did not know very much about it, but the author has such a good way of pulling you into historical events that you might not know much about otherwise and really making them feel relevant and present, and you really want to know what happens. I enjoyed that a lot, as well as Theodore Roosevelt's journey through the Amazon and almost dying and all that. That was also very fascinating and not something that I learned about in school or really understood, and I feel like I understood more of it after reading this, as well as feeling like it is somewhat relevant still. And I really enjoyed it. So I feel like if you are a a historical nonfiction fan, Candice Millard, it should be a like automatic pickup. I think any of her books would really be an interesting way to learn about something in history that you might not have known about. Now, the next two books are completely opposite on the spectrum of tone, but I'm grouping them together because they go under the group of short anecdotes that illustrate a larger problem. That's what I'm going to call them. So the first is called You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey, Crazy Stories About Racism by Amber Ruffin and Lacey Lamar. The book is talking about Lacey and all of these crazy racist microaggressions and straight up aggressions that she has had to deal with. And it is funny and exasperating and frustrating at times. But what I think it really ends up illustrating is how all these little stories come together to show how exhausting it is to deal with these things. One-on-one, you might say, it's not a big deal. Those kinds of things happen. You have to just shrug them off. But when that is such a constant barrage of things coming at you, that can be exhausting and really take a toll on a person. And so I really enjoyed it because it was a fun read, but also I think it was an important read as well. So on a completely opposite side, this one was not funny at all, but I picked up Not That Bad, Dispatches from Rape Culture, and Roxane Gay is the one who edited this book. Now, this book is talking about all sorts of people's experiences with being belittled, harassed, assaulted due to their gender. And it had such a variety of voices that I think it was very effective at taking all of these stories, some of them horrible and seeming to be so heavy, and some of them that seem, oh, well, that's just a small thing. But when you put it all together, you realize it's all part of that problem. And I thought that it was really, really well done and well curated. And there were just so many really powerful essays in this. So highly recommend. I think that this really sheds light on how difficult it can be, even if you aren't having the most worst thing. Everybody says, it's not that bad. It was just this. Some people have it worse. Some people have it worse. When all of it is bad and all of it is part of a society that is not treating women well. This next section of books I'm going to call Contemporary Reporting. Really looking at some issues and diving in. So let's start with the first book, which was Dreamland, The True Tale of America's Opiate Epidemic by Sam Quinones. And this was a fascinating look into the opioid epidemic in the United States. I really loved this book. I always recommend Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe, and I thought that one was really excellent, but this one went a little broader. We talk a lot about how heroin has been spread across the United States. It also brushes up on a lot of the Purdue Pharma things, and it is a really in-depth look at how opioids became a problem throughout all of the United States. So excellent, excellent read. Will make you want to throw something, but an excellent read. The next book that I read was Veritas, a Harvard professor, a con man, and the Gospel of Jesus' Wife by Ariel Sabar. This is just following a tattered piece of paper that might somehow prove that Jesus had a wife. And it's the Harvard professor that put it forward, the con man who may have forged it, and going through this whole mystery of, is it real, is it fake, and why did all of this come about, and what led to this. And it was a wild ride. This book I picked up, I start reading, I'm like, interesting. And then I'm like, okay. And then it just had twists and turns. This book was engaging. I really recommend it if you want a nonfiction that feels like a murder mystery almost that you can't put down. It was really, really engaging and really interesting and gives you a lot to think about, to discuss. Really enjoyed this one. The next book is The Road to Jonestown, Jim Jones and People's Temple by Jeff Gwynne. This is following Jim Jones, who was responsible for the Jonestown massacre, the largest murder-suicide in American history. So, heavy subject, but really, really well done, and felt very relevant and present to modern day. I found the tactics and the way that he spoke to convince people and hook people to be very interesting and a very good warning sign to look for in the people that you listen to and that you trust. So if you are interested in this subject at all, this book really did a good job. Another book that I thought was almost a necessary read was The Road to Unfreedom, Russia, Europe, and America. And this is talking about the history of Russian politics and how that is influencing American politics and European politics. I thought it was really interesting kind of looking at these different philosophies and how that's been playing out on a world stage. Really thought it was well done. I mean, my only downside is I don't think the people who need to read it are going to, but overall, this one was really good if you are interested in some of the history and philosophy that has come from Russia and the relationship with the United States and Europe. Now, this wouldn't count as a best of nonfiction if I didn't throw in one of my favorite nonfiction authors, and that is Patrick Radden Keefe. I picked up Rogues, True Stories of Grifters, Killers, Rebels, and Crooks, which was a great book, but the title is stupid. It is basically a collection of articles that Patrick Radden Keefe wrote, and all the articles are very interesting. Now, grouping them together under one title just seems really stupid to me. If they had put as the tagline, a collection of news articles from Patrick Radden Keefe, I would have said, cool, I'm going to read it. Instead, I'm trying to sit in my head thinking, how does this gang leader relate to Anthony Bourdain? I didn't think all of them were as cohesive as the title suggested, but if you want just some really good reporting and to learn about some really cool things, and if you're a fan of Patrick Radden Keefe, pick up this book. I think you will enjoy it. I also picked up The Snakehead, an epic tale of the Chinatown underworld and the American dream. Very good. Just proves how great Patrick Radden Keefe can be at making a subject very engaging. This talks about China and organized crime in the United States and is super interesting. If you like Patrick Radden Keefe, you'll like this. Does this feel like the best place to start on Patrick Radden Keefe? No, I still, from last year, recommend Say Nothing and Empire of Pain. They definitely feel more relevant and present, but this book holds up. The Snakehead still holds up. It was a really good read. And I also read Digital Gold, Bitcoin, and the Inside Story of the Misfits and Millionaires Trying to Reinvent Money by Nathaniel Popper. If you don't know anything about Bitcoin, this is a great place to start. I feel like it gives you a really good foundation. If you even know a little bit, this really helped me feel like I have a grasp on what cryptocurrencies are and how they're used and the philosophies behind them. Now, this book was written quite a while ago. It was written like 8 years ago, but it still holds up. I feel like it wasn't trying to talk about the technology in a way that would seem outdated. It was trying to explain what happened in the time it was, and I think it did a really good job, and I think this book will hold up for quite a while. So I really enjoyed this one. Now, this next section is going to be more of a memoir section. So the first book that I want to talk about is called Ancestor Trouble, A Reckoning and a Reconciliation by Maud Newton. So this was a book that is going through her own family history and reckoning with it. Now, was this a really positive look at her family history? No, she was dealing with mental illness, crime, slavery, racism, all sorts of things from her family, from not just her parents, but throughout her history. And as she learns more about it, she realizes what has made her who she is. And I really liked this because I am a fan of people looking into their past and learning from their family histories. And this does give you that, but it also helps you look at it in a you can learn from the ancestors that you're kind of ashamed of as well. And it doesn't always have to be inspiring stories of my grandmother making it through the cold pioneer winter. It can be, oh, well, this is my great great uncle who was a slaveholder and not a nice person. And understanding those things that make you who you are. I mean, those are your ancestors, and really understanding that. I liked watching her journey and seeing how her life was influenced by understanding her background and her family ties. So the next book was The Girl Who Smiled Beads, A Story of War and What Comes After by Clementine Wamaria and Elizabeth Wheel. This is following Clementine in the Rwandan genocide, and she is trying to escape. And it's following her journey of survival in refugee camps and her survival through these really horrible circumstances until she finally makes it to the United States and is granted asylum. And then it follows after what that means for her and what has happened to her life and trying to pick up those pieces. It was really a difficult read in some places, but I thought that it was a really important story that Clementine wanted to tell the world. And so I thought this was a really well done book, even though the subject matter is very heavy. Now, I also picked up Solito by Javier Zamora, and this was excellent. This is Javier telling his story. At 9 years old, he was sent by his grandparents with a coyote out to cross the border to reunite with his parents who were in the United States. And so this boy traveling through the most horrible circumstances to make it to his parents, sending out a young child, it was just, I spent the whole time like, child endangerment, please be okay. But his work, the way that he was able to express himself was really powerful, and I think it was a very important story to understand what a lot of people go through when going through some of this migration into the United States and how difficult and dangerous it can be, especially for children. And no child should ever be in some of those situations. So this was very much worth picking up. One of the best memoirs I've read. I picked up We Don't Know Ourselves, A Personal History of Modern Ireland. Now, this is by Fintan O'Toole. He has been a writer for the Irish Times for many years. This is his history of Ireland, but also with his own feelings and his own experiences mixed in. And it feels very present because he was there for a lot of major things, reporting on it, and I thought that it was a very interesting look into Irish identity. And so I thought it was just really well done. So if you're interested in Ireland, I think this is a good book to pick up to understand some of the context. Now, I picked up Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlin Dowdy, and this is following her time working in a crematory. It doesn't just focus on her own experiences, but talks a little bit about the processes and the science behind death and what happens after, and I thought it was very eye-opening and made me really want to learn and figure out what I want to do after my loved ones pass on and what I would prefer to have done when I pass away. Those kinds of things I think are worth thinking about, although I know so many people can find that to be too morbid to consider, but I found it to be very inspiring and helpful. So really enjoyed that one. And lastly, I also read Dead Man Walking, the eyewitness account of the death penalty that sparked a national debate by Helen Prejean. Sister Helen Prejean is a nun who worked with death row inmates, and this is talking about her experience with them, and I really thought it was well done. This came out in 1993. I have read some other books that have really helped me understand some things about the justice system and the death penalty, but this one was written before all of these, and what I liked about it is that she really didn't shy away from what these people have done. I think that a lot of the books that I have read have brought out the maybe they're innocent. We can't kill somebody that we think that could be innocent, and look at these statistics, and maybe they had extenuating circumstances. You know, they give the excuses. And I really liked that Helen Prejean went with these people are reprehensible. What they've done is horrible. And I don't know if they can change and be better, but they are humans, and we do not just kill people. It wasn't a shying away from the things that they had done. It was addressing it head on and saying that that doesn't matter. We should not kill people. And I really loved her strong moral stance and her message, and it was a really well done book. So really enjoyed it. I'm glad I picked it up. Now, to throw in just a couple other books, this one wasn't super contemporary, so I didn't put it in with the journalism section, but this is a journalistic masterpiece. I read Hiroshima by John Hersey, and this is just following what happened in Hiroshima on August 6th, 1945. And it is horrifying and heartbreaking and detailed, and it gives just exactly what happened and how amazing and important is this book. So I think everyone should pick this up and have to grapple with it. I think that it is very important. It was published in January 1st, 1946. This was published just right after. If you want pretty close to a primary source, pick this one up. This isn't some reimagining, oh, we're gonna reanalyze it. This is what happened when it happened, and I think that it is really worth picking up if you haven't already. Another book that I really enjoyed, that I didn't quite know where to put it in my random categories, was a bit more of a science book. I picked up The Third Chimpanzee, The Evolution and Future of the Human Animal by Jared Diamond. This is following the evolution of our species, and Jared Diamond is great at doing the pop science thing, right? It's really easy to get into his books, feel like you've learned some things, and really enjoy them. I liked this a lot. I think that he does a really good job at this. So yeah, if you want a book about evolution, pick this one up. I think it was really good. So I also read 2 other books by him. I read Guns, Germs, and Steel and The World Until Yesterday, and I think that both of those were really well done. I think probably just my favorite out of the 3 was The Third Chimpanzee. But I think if you want a fun, more pop science kind of book, Jared Diamond is a great way to go. And that is it. That is my nonfiction reads of 2023. What did you think? Which of these books have you read? Which ones do you want to read now? And do you disagree? Were some of these books that you would never recommend to anyone? Let me know in the comments down below. And I will be back. I will be back with my best fiction reads of 2023. Maybe I'll even throw in some of the worst fiction. We'll see. So I will see you all on the next one.